like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. It's very romantic and poignant, but kind of not very sanitary.
Only between two assassins can you have a token of love that's covered with blood.
Hi, this is Juniper.
Hello, this is Elle.
And welcome to another episode of us discussing yet another cdrama, Chinese drama. And actually, it's not a new one because we finished watching Are You the One, which we had just talked about recently. At the time, we were watching two costume dramas at the same time, that and Go East. Now we have finished Are You the One? So we wanted to do an episode, hopefully quickly, fingers crossed, toes crossed, that really only focuses on one, right? Which is Are You the One? So, to be honest, Elle, I thought we would be out of things to talk about because we kind of already talked about at a very high level, like why we like the show. But surprisingly, having finished the show, I know you and I have texted about this. We do have things we want to talk about. So, as a refresher, right? The show is about basically what the author you had mentioned last time. It's based on a novel, and the novel author has said, "Oh, think of it as an ancient Chinese version of Mr. and Mrs. Smith," right? So basically, two people kind of with covert identities or false identities, kind of who are married or falsely married in this show, and lying to each other about who they are. But slowly, of course, they fall in love. And what we had said we liked about the show was kind of that, will they, won't they find out, which you knew they were going to find out about each other, and how was that going to go? But at the same time, even though there was that kind of like spy games type of dynamic, it was very much a traditional sweet costume romance without what we considered unnecessary plot twists and, sensationalism.
Right.
Having done now all 40 episodes, not done watching. I'm very important verb missing there. What's our final verdict?
Right.
No ratings yet. Let's just talk about how we feel.
No ratings. So you were the first to say, "Hey, this is starting to feel longer than necessary," right? Like, so obviously we're gonna have spoilers. So by episode, so it's full 40 episodes. By episode 31, 32, they get married, and it's a very nice wedding. But then you have
36.
8. Is it 36? Oh,
31,
okay.
32
they
is
get
when
back
they
together.
get contracted. Yes.
Yes. But then the rest of it, right? You're like, well, what's going to happen the next 6 to 8 episodes? And actually, I was telling you, I felt like I was missing a critical scene where they're actually plotting, like they're actually telling the audience, hey, we still have this thing we need to resolve. In terms of the Prince Sui, who is, there's a traitor in the system, we need to find this traitor who is like corrupt. And I felt like there was that scene was missing, because then you're just watching them do stuff. You're watching them move. They both move to the capital, right? It's like, new setting. And then they're like, oh, now they're living with his sister's family. And you're like, what is happening? Like, what does this have to do with our couple? What does it have to do with... I feel
like the sister is now more prominent. And like a lot of these not new characters in that you've met them in passing before. But it's like the spotlight shines more on these other people now than them. Yes. So the irony to me is we really enjoyed the show. And the first like half, even not 2/3. It's 40 episodes. So let's say 3/4, right? Up to about 30. Very enjoyable. First 20, super enjoyable. So a lot of people, I think, felt the show is very slow and boring. So if you abandon ship, it's because you couldn't take the first 20 episodes at pace. You didn't want this type of romance, right? Where they're playing house while pretending, right? To do other stuff and guessing games and such. But we love that aspect. And so whoever loved the show enough to stay, loved that aspect. And yet they kind of changed the tone of it in the last arc, right? The last quarter of the show. And you're like, hey, what happened? like now you're kind of trying to pull a fast one on me and make it bigger than what it needs to be, right? Like it does not need to be bigger and more convoluted than it is. Now, it wasn't really convoluted. To your point though, it was ironically, it was much more fast moving in the last 10 episodes, in some cases, than in the first 20 and 30 episodes, especially the first 20 where they're playing house. But it was fast moving in the things that I think you don't care about. We're like, this is not the romance. In fact, whenever the male lead and female lead are on screen, it's not about them as a couple. Or if they are as a couple, it's to show how smart they are as a couple in outsmarting political enemies and family enemies and such, right? Like, I'm like, but that's not what the reason I watched this show. If I wanted a revenge and political drama, I think I texted you this, I would go watch The Double. The Double is the superior show in that genre, right?
Yes.
I watched this for the main couple's sweet, like, kind of like romance and their interesting personalities when they kind of interplay. Like, even once they find out about each other, there is that very like flirtatious, like, I hate you, but I don't really. You're such a, scumbag, but you're not really. You know what I mean? Like that kind of like dangerous flirtiness that you like. Now that they know about each other. But they became much more plain vanilla in the last 10 episodes. Because they're like, we're now going to resolve all political and familial plot conflicts. I'm like, but I didn't care about any of those. They didn't even exist in my universe of this show.
Right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so if you look at the last like 8 to 10 episodes, right? They start highlighting like these random generals, their offspring, their daughters-in-laws, like, I mean, we actually, you know what? Even the 20th to 30th episodes, like when you and I were actually saying like there's too much of this drama with his aunt and the cousin, right? There was like all this like
the marriage, like you really want to get married,
right? Like we get it. Like this cousin has spent her life basically being trained and groomed to marry him, and he has no interest in her at all as a wife. And so you're watching this like annoying thing where the aunt is trying to like guilt and gaslight his mother to like convince him to marry her daughter.
We didn't talk about his mother, by the way. Annoying woman that she is. We do have to talk about his mom, but go on. Sorry,
his mom. Yeah, and then the last 10 episodes becomes like, okay, now we're gonna bring like the bigger. Okay, now it's not the family drama. Now it's like the political, national drama, country system level where there's a coup that's about to happen. They're gonna usurp or assassinate the emperor, and I feel like it just took away from the main couple. And oddly, I really actually do like the emperor and the empress together.
Yes.
They were actually a very charming couple, but I don't think they spent enough time, and so I'm not like as emotionally invested, and I feel like they just kind of sprinkle them in, like
exactly.
It wasn't
just exactly how I felt. Like when you said it took away from the main couple, the irony is it didn't add to my esteem for the other people. Not that we don't like the other people. We like a lot of the supporting characters, not just the emperor. Well, the emperor is great, right? Sometimes he's kind of annoying at first, but but his empress, you like them. But honestly, because of the way the show, like, it's like can't focus at the end, you're kind of like, I don't need this, take it or leave it, right? Like, in fact, I could leave it. Could we just make this like 30 episodes long in totality, cut all of this crap out, and just like, finish the main story? They could have, I've repeatedly said this offline to you, I think they could have resolved the plot points in the last arc in about 1 to 2 episodes, and then they could have ended with what you wanted, which is the happy wedding.
Right. Like, I think actually, I understand they wanted that wife already in the family drama, but I'm like, they should have resolved the political stuff. Like, he could have romantically pursued her and then do the political stuff and then end with like that lovely wedding that they did and do it in 30 to 35 episodes. Like, you don't need that 5 extra episodes. I mean, as much as I want to spend as much time with these people as I want, like, they were barely together. It wasn't
quality time.
It wasn't quality time. Yeah, they were barely apart. Like, he was sent to the front lines, and she was home, like I said,
dealing with mother-in-law.
Dealing with with his mother too, right? His
Yeah.
mother wasn't
Mother-in-law
exactly.
and the aunt and the cousin. I'm like, I could just watch the double. That's much more exciting if
It
you want
was
to see women
better,
bitching out each other, right?
right? Or if you want to see a nefarious mother, right? So I think for us, so I would say like I still enjoyed it. It's just I don't know how it ended in the novel. I didn't get that far in the novel, but I do feel like it's a shame that yeah, it just I mean because people already weren't the critics were already saying the first half went great, and we really enjoyed the first half, and then but then the second half is kind of like okay, I wish it went better. That's all.
Yeah,
So
this is a show that could have been much tighter and would have been a much better show. Now, I guess
mhm.
you could say that about a lot of Chinese dramas, but I mean, yeah, they it could be the novel. I don't actually plan to finish the novel. We both right. You were reading, or maybe you are still reading it, whereas I was listening to an audio drama version of it. I didn't think the novel, as I said last time when we were discussing the show, that the source material was very exciting for me. So I will
Yeah.
not. And maybe this is a show adapting elements of the novel that just don't work, right? Because the novel probably was all over the place.
Right.
That said, I agree with you. I still love the show. It's a very enjoyable costume romance. One of the better ones in recent years, but it's not an amazing one after the last 10 episodes. Like, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
it reduces my grade of it.
Yes. I will say though, the only saving grace is that the ending is a real ending. Like it's a
Yes,
happy ending and it's
not a cop
clear what
out.
happens. It's clear to what happens to all three couples. Like it's not
Yeah.
like, oh, what happened to one of these like you actually know what direction all three couples are going in. And that's the only thing where I'm like, okay, that was a nicely tied bow. It wasn't like what happened or oh, is there going to be an epilogue I need to look for or do I need to demand one from the director,
We should talk about the couples, but we should not. Let's talk about the main couple first, because when you said the three couples happy ending, I'm like, three couples. What are the three couples? I'm like, oh yeah. There is, there are three
there are
couples.
three couples.
So that tells you a lot about how well or not well they served the CPdom, right, on these side
Yes.
characters.
Yes.
But before we move off of the main couple, so I think we still love the show. We finished it. Wished it could have landed better, but it still was a solid, happy ending. At least it gave us that, which is thank God so rare, unfortunately, in Chinese drama land these days. Let's talk about things really that stood out to us about the show as we watch, because we didn't go into depth about the show before when we talked
Yeah.
about it. So we will jump around, but let's start jumping at least somewhat focusedly on the main couple and things related to them.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
So I think one of the things that I texted you about too, and we didn't cover it last time, was when you watch the first 5 to 10 episodes, and so the situation again is that she has amnesia. She thinks she's his wife. He's like playing the husband.
Right.
And the funniest thing to me is like because there are these literal scenes of him like stressed out about what's he gonna do because like she's building up the porcelain business. Like he only did it to like keep her busy, but she's actually like making a big deal. She wants to join the porcelain trade commission or committee, like the guild. Like she wants to like sell her porcelain to the royal family, and he's like getting a headache, and he's like, how do I get her to not get involved? And as I'm watching this, I'm like, the funniest thing to me is like no one asked him to pretend to be her husband, right? Like he's not like no one said, hey, this is the strategy to keep her, it's like his own plan. And so he's like,
it wasn't trying not plan. He stumbled into it by accident.
Yeah, he stumbled into it.
His friend.
His nickname, right? His nickname was the same name as the husband that she supposedly married.
She was supposed to have married, yeah.
Yes, Choi Jiu or something like that, right?
Choi Jiu, yeah.
Yeah. So he's like, yes, I'm your husband, and he's like, wait, I don't care for this woman, and okay, I'll just pretend, and he buys this like little house and situates her in there, and then he's just like hoping to just keep her there until the bandit, the main target of his that he's trying to catch, will show up to save her from him. So the funniest thing was just like he's just running around, like running back and forth between the military camp and the mansion to their little house, and you're like, he's doing this to himself. No one forced him to like be her husband.
Right. When you pointed that out, I was like, that's so true, actually. Like, anytime. And he's like the most powerful man, right? Everyone either knows him, and if you don't know him, then you don't care, right? Which, by the way, I thought it was interesting because everyone technically in town knows him, right? Because that's how he got everyone to play along. Because they're all like, "Oh, Lord, so and so." They're like, "Shh, don't say anything," right? Like basically, here's the jig. Don't give it up. Except for the neighbors, who apparently none of them have a clue who he is. I'm like, "Oh, this is a weird town," but Storyville.
It's a little town far away from the mansion.
But I do think that it sort of lends itself to the romance aspect, which is you got to think about the psychology here then, right? Like, I think very early on you suspect, or you're supposed to suspect or think that the reason he doesn't give up the jig is because he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to stop playing house because he's actually quite liking now his comfortable little home with the wifey, who cooks for him and is so whom he's so growing to be proud of, as we said last time, right? That she's so capable and so beautiful, although she's not capable in the womanly arts, but right, he doesn't want to give it up. The only time he tries to give it up, and later when she accuses him of putting one over on her, remember, he even brought this up. He's like, I did let you go. I was trying to let you go. Like, basically, like, I was trying to be fair, right? Like, well, fair as he could be in that situation, which he wrote her the divorce letter when he was going to the first time he was being sent to the front lines to conceivably die, right? He was being set up, basically, go die. And she chased him. And I thought it was so funny, right? Because you could tell he caved immediately. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
he's like, all right, she's
okay, so fine. Forget this. How stupid of me to write that divorce letter. Like, he totally wants to, or he has already bought into this concept of the little family with her.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because he remember the friend was interested in her too. Like, he's like, oh, I'll marry her, and he's like,
no, he was like, nope.
Yeah, he's like, you're the worst candidate ever. And he's like, why? What's wrong with me? I'm a marquis. I can give her a home, Right. And so in his mind, he's already a little bit possessive, but he was still kind of like sort of in denial, I think.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah, and then when she chased after him, I felt like, wow, what a declaration of love. Because it's like, she's like, screw that. I'm not gonna let you just divorce me. Like, you better tell it to my face,
And you never could rip it up. Remember? That was hilarious. He's like, oh, I'm gonna rip it up. Oh no, I can't rip this up.
Right, like, because she found remember, she made a big deal, like, I found the nicest fabric, and we're gonna like put our wedding certificate, like, bonded onto the paper. And they're trying to rip it up, and they can't.
He's like, nobody can rip this up, right? So that was funny, but like, those are the moments that you just love, right? Like, you're like, oh. So yeah, and can you imagine if he wasn't as possessive and somehow she did end up getting married to his friend? How uncomfortable and awkward would that be? And what a reminder always, right? The constant reminder. Your best friend now has your wife that you love, a fake wife that you now love. So yeah, no, I thought that was interesting. So let's see. So speaking of scenes we love, can we talk about the waterfall?
Oh yes, the waterfall. So I was saying that it's kind of a full circle scene because they met, quote unquote, met at the waterfall, because the waterfall is where, when she was injured and basically dying, that she was found in a pool of water at the bottom of the waterfall. And he saves her, not thinking she's the concubine of this mountain bandit.
His nemesis mountain bandit, who she turns out to be, actually. She's the real mountain bandit.
So she's actually the mountain bandit. So the whole time you thought it was some dude. It was actually her with a male name. And so so he saved her, and so when she woke up, so that's why she had amnesia. She was basically probably comatose or had lost a lot of blood. And so after they basically know each other's real identities, they end up at the same waterfall. And at this point, I feel like
the ways. This is the parting of the ways scene.
Yes. But when I want to watch it again, because I feel like in that scene they both know they like each other. I don't know if they quite love each other, but they do like each other a lot. And I feel like he's like I know who you are now, and it doesn't mean I don't like you. Like he was actually more open, ironically more open to the idea that they could somehow like be together. But she's the one saying, "No, no, you're my enemy, and I can never be with you." And which I thought was really surprising, actually, when it played out that way, because she actually knew his identity longer than he knew her identity. Right? Remember, she had a few episodes where she was already like, oh, he deceived me. He's actually the Lord, and I need to destroy him.
Well, I think she's angry, right? And he's in her mind before she found out about the. So I think remember there was a misunderstanding when before she lost her memory when she was still the bandit. Remember she thought he was evil, or not trustworthy as the commander.
Oh, right, because that girl. Sun Yun or whatever.
The evil, whatever bitchy girl, who was in also Lost You Forever as the evil bitchy girl,
or actress. Getting typecasted.
Unfortunately, typecasting. But she does have that kind of face. Unfortunately, very pretty but very bitchy. Someone basically, her character, right, set them up to have a misunderstanding. They were supposed to have like not a truce, like an armistice day or something, like one day where they're not gonna fight, right?
Yeah, during the festival, right? The
Right. So
festival.
So Liu Mingtang, the bandit leader, when she was still the bandit leader, was mistakenly led to believe that his people attacked her people at night, and so she went and. You remember the whole show starts with her shooting an arrow at him and almost killing him, right? Except he was, Superman and stopped it with his hands. Lovely. I'm not sure how that works, but cdrama. That would have been a very short drama, by the way.
Oh, yeah, like right to the throat. Oh, well, there is that.
There we go. Unless they reincarnate, like Princess Royal. So, anyways, but he thought she tried to sneak attack him because she did, because she was doing it in retribution. Justly in her mind for what she thought was his incursion against their truce. So that was the reason. I think she doesn't trust him yet at the waterfall. Yeah. She definitely loves him because you can tell, even before the waterfall scene, what you were saying about the few episodes of her kind of like not immediately doing something about the fact that this man's been lying to her. You can tell like she's trying to get him to reveal what his motivations are or how he really feels. And
or who he is.
Remember that conversation when they're just lying side by side and she's like, oh, how was our life like back in the capital? And he made up this whole thing, except it came off the cuff so naturally, right? Yeah. Like he's half asleep and he's like, oh, we used to do this and I used to come home. I forget exactly what he said, but it was like he drew a scene of sweet life together, basically, of happy life every day. And she cried. She teared up. Now, I don't know
she coughed up blood, didn't she?
No, I don't.
No, she did. So. She got out of bed and she coughed up blood in the garden.
I think that was because her family had all been killed. No.
No. That was that scene. Yeah.
Okay, but I thought I already witnessed her.
It's like a haunting. It's like she
had already witnessed her whole family getting killed. Remember? Because she went home after that, and then there was that whole umbrella thing. Like, oh, you forgot your umbrella. Oh, no, I didn't forget mine. So she had, I think it was all of the stress of that coming up. Yeah. But yeah, she teared up. In my mind, I interpreted it as she was a little bit sad to not have that life with him. Because I think that's the life she would have liked. It's almost like nobody wants to wake up from this dream. Right. Does that make sense? That's how I interpret it.
Oh, I interpret it as that she thought he was still deceiving her and not telling her the truth. I didn't read it.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of both, right? Like, but why would you cry because he's deceiving her? Like, she's angry. So those are tears of anger.
I didn't feel like they were angry tears. I think they were more like you said, it's sort of like the dream has to come to an end. Like, yeah. Like we can't live this farce anymore because now she knows the truth.
She never was really malicious towards him. Now, there were a few scenes where they made it sound like she was going to stab him, but she never really went through with it because she wasn't. The only time she stabbed him was straight, like, in the front, not in the back, when he was like, let's not talk about this at the waterfall. He was almost going to let it go, right? Like, he's still trying to save their so-called whatever it is. It's not a marriage. It's a relationship. And she's just like, let me stab you with my hairpin, and let's call this like the end. Like, in a lot of times they cut hair, right, in Chinese drama, to kind of be like 一刀两断, like that's it. This is the end of our association. But he then, of course, plucks the thing out, which is not very sanitary, mind you, wipes it with his hand and puts it back in her hair. And I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. It's very romantic and poignant, but kind of not very sanitary.
Only between two assassins can you have a token of love that's covered with blood.
I hope she washed it, because I don't think, you don't wash your hair a lot in ancient China, okay? You brush it with oil or something, I think. Right? You brush it a lot, so...
She also, remember, she learned acupressure or something. Remember, she knew where to stab to kill?
Mm-hmm.
Remember
she
that
didn't stab
scene?
them at a critical place, no.
Yes. She did not do it to her, to kill him.
It wasn't meant to be, and he knew that. And they knew. That's what, I mean, going back to what you're saying, right? The parting of the ways at the waterfall was meant to show that they really do love each other now in some ways, or have very strong feelings. He definitely had very strong feelings, and he was not going to hide it anymore. But in the same way, I feel like all along the show, he's the more doting one. She's actually the more stronger character, in the sense of, like, she leads him rather than he leads her.
Yes. I think in modern context, you would say he's whipped.
He is very whipped, but I love seeing him being whipped. He's so good at, like, being likable being whipped, because he's such a... He's only whipped by her. He's not whipped by anyone else. That's the beauty of it, right? Like,
yeah. I'm gonna jump, but like when you talk about like her cooking for him, right? So there's one obviously very well-known dish in this drama, the crab roe rice. And so I remember in the novel, the story is that he got the crabs from like somewhere, and then he's like, I'm gonna take this to a restaurant and have them cook it for me. And then he bumps into her in the town, and she's like, oh, what are you doing here? And he's like, he can't tell her I'm about to head to a restaurant. She's like, oh, you got crabs? Okay, bring it home and I'll cook it for you. And he's just like, what? Like, he was not going to let her do that. He wasn't planning to. And so this domestication scene of her cooking for him was like, in the novel, was like completely accidental. And but what I liked in the drama is that they kind of like carried it through. So like the first time she makes it, he like, oh, this is delicious. And then when the friend comes over, he won't share it with the friend.
Yes.
And
then,
like,
no, you don't get
like,
any.
Yeah, and then the next time, like when they were somewhere, like she makes it, she's like, well, I don't have any crab roe, so she made it with like salted egg yolk, and he's still eating it like it's the best thing ever because it's something she made, and it's like something between them. And then like that scene where he's like, well, I'll make it for you next time. He's like, you're still willing to cook for me? And this was after they had already broken up. And like I was like, oh, I mean, it's like really not that deep in terms of the line, like the drama, but it's like it was so touching. Like to him, the happiness is of his wife cooking him like her most well-known dish, and that's like it's a thing between the two of them, and it's like so sweet. But anyways,
it's the simple sweet things in life, in the show, in the romance, that makes it work. It's not the grand stuff. That's why like we said earlier, the focus on the suddenly grand stuff in the last 10 episodes was like, what?
Yes.
And it wasn't like in a way that was done so grandly. You're like, yes, now this is the politicking I want to see in the political drama, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even the show's theme song, the opening, it's a very like demure is maybe not the cozy type of.
Yes,
right?
It's a very light music, but very warm.
Like, right. So I was like, the show's going to be like a sweet, like maybe not sweet, but a cozy romance, which is exactly what it was for 75% of the time. So yeah, your crab roe rice, and I know you love that stuff because.
Oh yes, I was like, oh my god, in Little Red Book, like there's people who do videos to teach you how to make it. Like they literally have the video of the drama in the background. And then they're like, here's how to make it. And then they show you step by step.
Meanwhile, I'm going like, I'm sure that tastes great, but the cholesterol.
Oh, I saw an interview where they interviewed them, Zhang Wanyi, about the food. And he said that they have a chef making all this food. Like every scene, like the lotus root, whatever they were eating. He's like, oh yeah, the food, it's like super healthy, super clean. He's like, I don't eat lunch just so I can eat during the food scene. And they were like, oh, is it real? He's like, yeah, when I ate the crab roe rice, I was like, oh, this is real crab roe. I thought it was just like food coloring to make it look like it.
Is that why he
Like-
was eating it with such giant spoonfuls? I
He said
noticed
he-
that. He's
yes,
like
he said
focused
he
on
liked it.
eating.
Yeah, he said, "Oh my god, it was really delicious." So he was like saving his appetite to eat the real food.
It works for the show too, right? Because it shows like how Cui Xingzhou is so into her and her cooking, right? Like whenever she does
Yes.
cook for him, especially later when they reunite, right? And finally reconcile, he's just like, oh, thank God, she's still willing to cook for me and I get to eat, and this is happiness itself, right? So
Yes.
it's very
Yeah.
sweet. So it's good to know that behind the scenes they'll like
He was really
he's
enjoying
like,
it.
I love this chef.
Like I feel like this show did more for this dish than Love Me Love My Voice, because that one had too many dishes and too many recipes. Like
Well,
that one
that
was-
and the whole he's wearing such nice clothes. I can't watch him cook.
Oh, you know the scene? Okay, I'm jumping again. You know the scene at the end when like she breaks him out of prison and they're wearing.
Oh my god, they were wearing white.
I was like, how do they kill like 100 people in black and not one speck of blood on their clothing?
Well, you know, slow mo, right? Like with this last slow. Yes, I had the exact same thought. I was like, so they're both in pure white kind of underweary clothes, and there's blood just gushing everywhere, right? This is not like I shot a bullet at you 20 meters away. This is me like with a dagger slashing your throat open and your veins open.
Yes,
I'm like
combat.
I'm like, wow, you have very good starch on your clothes, maybe. Like,
And the white, when they were both wearing white, I was like, this was the only time where I felt it was a direct homage to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, because there's a scene in the movie where they're both wearing white and there's fire everywhere, like the house had already burned down. Where like he's like
Mr. Smith. Was that the last scene, or when they were running from the house? Maybe.
I think so. Yeah, like she's wearing his shirt, he's wearing like white undies or whatever. I was like, it just reminded me of that. I don't know if that was on purpose, but
yeah. Well, either way, whether it's accidental or not, we do appreciate the homage, or maybe inadvertent homage.
Yeah.
So we can we talk about kind of how they got back together? The whole shenanigans.
Yes.
So Waterfall was not, thankfully, the end of the show, right? Like if it was like a stupid Chinese drama or story, it would have been the end, like tragic ending, or they never get back together. Which, thank God, it's not that kind of show. So it took, it was kind of annoying to see them apart, but you knew it had to happen. But it was kind of funny to see him kind of
yes, I was cracking up. I was laughing so hard because. Okay, so
I'm just thinking about it right now.
Because in the story, right, like even though he's downplayed in the beginning, you realize he is a man of very high status and power, and so he's trying. So the emperor sends him on this basically to be like, you need to convince one of these lords to come in and become. And
other
if he
lords,
comes,
because the emperor is newly crowned, right? Like it happened like. In like overnight, well, 3 months, but 3 months that happened in 2 seconds.
I know. We're going to talk about the plot holes in this at some point later.
Or not. Let's
or
just
not. But okay, so plot hole aside, right? So the newly crowned emperor's like, you need to bring this lord into the capital, convince him somehow. So he shows up in this town, and then he can't convince the lord. And he's like, well, I found out my wifey is in this other town next door, so I'm going to go over there. And then that lord is like, because he has scouts watching his every action, and he's like, why is he going to that town? He's going to try to get that lord. That lord's not going to go to the emperor, So they're thinking that he's there for political reasons, but he's really there for personal reasons, which is, I need to find my wife and woo her and get her back into my good graces.
So was it clear that he was really only focused on getting the Mingtang back, or was he really trying to use dual purposes? Because whatever he did, right? Whatever he did worked out in his favor, because those two lords, as you said, basically misread, interpreted everything he did or said or not said or did as, oh, he's up to something, like politically, right? Like, and it's almost like they maneuvered themselves into favorable place for whatever his and the emperor's agenda was, which was hilarious.
Right.
Like they were just like brainwashing themselves. because
Yeah,
of
like
all
they were
the
getting they were getting like all worked up and angry, and he has no idea that it's like a domino effect, right? Like he's just like I'm just here for the wifeys, and like like even like going to the second lord, like going to his mansion and saying I need this type of food or this type of ingredient because he heard his wifey wanted to buy it to make food with it, and they're like, oh, that's like the most expensive swan, that it's really rare, and he just took it like that. What does that mean? And it's
it was
just so
funny, right?
funny.
She wanted
It's
like she was testing. She knew he has spies, I think, right, in her grandfather's house where she was staying, and she basically was like, "Oh, I want this goose," which is really
yeah.
hard to procure. So then he somehow gets it from that lord, right, the overlord of that region that she's in, from his
Yep.
kind of mansion, and then. What did they talk about? They're like, oh, what did he do yesterday? Because the other lord was also tailing him. He's like, oh, you know, Wang, which is the male lead's like official title, right, was all over the
Mhm.
marketplace with his followers to ask about like food and stuff. He's like, oh, well, if you think about it, that's the best way to get a lay of the land and to know what's going on in the town. That was like, oh yeah, he was totally on a reconnaissance, mission for geese.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, we talked about last time, like there is a lot of comedy in this
Right.
show, but it's not like pushed in your face, but
It's
it's still
understated
funny.
comedy. Yes,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
understated but corny at the same time, right? Like it's
It is
really
corny.
obvious, like
Yeah.
childish, but you're like, oh, but the way they deliver it, you're like, oh, and then this happened.
Yeah, so I mean, going back to like the shenanigans you mentioned, like and how he's pursuing her, right? Like I feel like once he realized that the depth of his feelings, that he was like, just openly like, I'm here for you. Like he's not gonna take no for an answer. Like he just wants a
No,
shot at this point.
he's emo.
And
He's emo
yeah.
Wang, yeah, emo lord. Was he like writing in a diary or something? Like what were
Oh,
those stupid letters
right.
he was writing that everyone
No.
misinterpreted?
Okay, he was writing that because he was being watched by the scouts. So they're
Uh-huh.
thinking he's writing these like really like secret notes, but he's just like calling them out or calling them out for doing what they're doing to him, which is like maybe keeping him hostage in the mansion or whatever. But then he's also like opining about how his thoughts are really with her. And so it's like
Right.
a
He's being
combination.
emo. He's being
Yeah.
emo at the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
time.
It's like subtle but not subtle, and so whoever's reading it, if you know him, then you're like you can read between the lines, but if you don't know him, you're like, what is this
Well,
gibberish?
his jailer, Wang Ye was like, "What is he calling me a dog? I'm the dog in that letter." And then Liu Mingtang, remember, she tried to go. He broke his leg, right? Because he was about to get forced to marry a princess,
Yeah.
and he's by a not a planned good deed, but an accidental, well, not accidental good deed, but he had a chance to do a really good deed, which is save the son of his jailer, Wang Ye, right, from
Mm-hmm.
being basically carried away by a very, very lively horse. And in the doing of that, he broke his leg. Although I think his friend, the Marquis, figured out that he kind of did it on purpose. He let
Yeah,
himself
because they
break
they
his leg.
overblew how serious the injury
No,
was.
no, he's like, oh, Kung Fu so well, you could have avoided such a serious injury, I think was the implication.
Oh, yes, you're right.
But,
Yes.
but, um, but when she went in to heal his injury, right, she thought she had put him to sleep, but he's like,
Mm-hmm.
first I thought it was an assassin, but then what assassin comes in and reads your letters first? That was really funny, right? When she's just like, he's like, she's like, I just want to live a libertine life and go find a lover. Well, he's like, I can be a lover. Like, make me
Hey,
a
like
lover.
why do you need to look for someone else? I'm right here. But I think it's
So funny.
because I think like if you put it in that perspective, I think because she realizes if she were to be with him, it's a different life, right?
Of course, yeah.
It's a gilded cage life, and he can't he can't guarantee freedom, which is why he like remember he like had this whole plan for her, like okay, I know you don't want to leave Beijing, so you stay here, do your little escort business. I can be free 4 times out of the year, and I can come back here. And, like he was really trying to accommodate her. Like, okay, you don't want to move to Zhengzhou, then I'll come to you. Like and I think she was moved. I think she liked the fact that he wasn't gonna force her to do something she didn't want to do. But to be with her, he will,
Compromise.
change.
Yeah.
Compromise. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah. So it was really cute. Like, even the scene where he like thought she was getting married, remember? And then he like got on the horse and like cut off the wedding
Her
procession.
unfortunate cousin.
She's
But
like, I'm not her. Yeah, it was like all these big romantic gestures, right? Like, and she sees it, like, oh, she conveniently is standing there. I'm like, oh,
It's a
shouldn't
small
she
town.
be?
What do you want? The only time when it's not convenient is when they need to not find out about, secret identities and such. Then nobody finds out anything. Like, the whole
Yeah,
town knows who he is except their neighbors, like I said. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, that's interesting.
Right.
Speaking of which, so that's kind of the inconsistencies in plots, right? Which so maybe take a quick pivot to that. I think you had mentioned you want to talk about some plot holes or maybe issues you had with the plot, which I'm like, oh, you really overthought this now.
Well, we could start with the female lead, who I happen to like very much. Like I already mentioned, I think
Yeah,
she's one
so
of the
strong, so pretty.
strong, so pretty, fully dimensional. But I feel like there are definitely plot holes in how she came to be who she is. So in the drama they don't state how old she is, right? One can infer she's so in real life I think the actress is like 25, but she looks older than 25 actually, more mature. But she's supposed to be probably in her early 20s. So in the novel she's actually only 18. And I don't know the timing that she spent with the mountain bandits or was a mountain bandit herself, but I was trying to do the math. Like, okay, so her background, she does not come from a family of assassins, right? In the drama, her grandfather has the escort business. They just help, it's like a security service, right? When you say escort, it's not like promiscuous woman,
Yeah,
right?
they're
It's
bodyguards. They're basically
yeah, the
bodyguards,
bodyguards. Yeah.
UPS bodyguards, FedEx
Yeah.
bodyguards back in the
but
day.
like, right. So they don't. So okay, I know they showed like the agency where they are training because they are trained to fight people, but like I didn't get the sense they were supposed to be trained to like kill people, right? Unless
Why
it's
not?
in self
Bandits
defense.
attack, you have to kill.
That's true. So I guess my thing was has she been trained her whole life,
I
and then
think
she
so.
just joined the mountain bandits and then just took that up? I guess.
I think she started her own bandits to kind of take up a cause. Now, they don't go into that, and I don't know if the book ever does. I feel like you're supposed to just take it as is. Like, Mr. and Mrs. Smith doesn't tell you how, Angelina Jolie or Brad Pitt got into the business, right?
Right.
But you don't need to, which is fine. But I agree with you, though. The either the novel and or the show takes liberties with, in terms, not liberty. Liberty is not the right word. They gloss over a lot of stuff, and you kind of just have to like assume or understand that that is how it is, right? Without you questioning it. Like, that is so.
Because if you think of it, right, like, so near the end of the drama, they have that big battle scene, right, where she basically showcases her martial arts prowess, if you will. And I'm watching this and I'm like, well, okay, like, it's cool to see a woman who's very strong and all that. It's like, like Lara Croft kind of thing, right? But at the same time, you're like these are, I don't know how to say it. Like, I feel like it's like watching someone playing a video game, like there's no emotions. You're just like, just kill everyone. And then you're done, and then you move on. And I felt like, how did she become like? I can't believe that her grandfather would have trained her to be like this cold-blooded assassin type, right? It's one thing to say, like,
trained her. I think she just is trained that way.
Like, she is that person.
Well, she is a pretty tough cookie.
Yeah.
In my mind. So I don't expect her to be a wilting flower. Yeah. How much do I know about flowers? You can see.
So I'm saying, like, if she was 18 to 20, right? Like, you're assuming she had to still have trained since she was quite young. It's not like, oh, I'm 15 and I'm going to start learning this. Like, you learn this.
I think they are all supposed to have learned it very young. I mean, that's how you're supposed to start, Go ask Donnie Yen. Go ask Jackie Chan. When did they start? Jet Li, But so I don't have a problem with that aspect. I just take it as this is her persona. She's a strong lady, right? And she came up with the whole plan to escape her own unwanted wedding, for God's sakes. She ran into the mountains and then hooked up with, the ex-princess, crown prince's son. Who was Ziyu. Ziyu. Anyways,
Oh.
we're not here to play pronunciation games. So I do question though, how does she like her wrist? I know they gave her a lot of things to heal it, but she became like suddenly okay again at the end to fight. Like it wasn't like, oh, my wrist is really weak again. Like when she needed to be, her wrist was never a problem.
Right.
Did you notice
Right.
that? I was like, wait a minute. So sometimes her wrist hurts when she's lifting a vase, but then other times, like even when she was 1-on-1 with the first guy who works for the evil girl that she killed, or her uncle finished him off, but she really started the killing, right?
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute. How is she so able to confidently take him on 1-on-1?
Right, because you don't see her training. It's not
No.
like she's recuperating like in training to remember or retrain her body for combat, right? Like you just see her as a housewife. Like even when she like chased after him to the military camp, it's not like she participated in any sort of training. So yeah, I think those are like small things. I mean, I think the bigger loopholes, right? Like things that we want to talk about would be like how the emperor came to be, because basically I guess it was an attempt assassination on him. I mean, his father was killed. His father was a crown prince, right? So they snuck him away. But then how did it come back to like how did he prove his identity, right? And then
people were recognizing him.
Yeah, but I mean, unless you look a lot, I mean, was he like the spitting image of his father? You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like,
yeah, I think it's based on like you have to assume that he had to ally with the bad people, not the bad people, but the ultimate villains, right? At the end of the show were his supporters. So in the novel they talk about that, like the 旧部, like the people, the old parts of the court that supported him because they knew his father, versus the usurper empress, dowager empress, and her little baby son. Like I think that's where you're supposed, that's all of the stuff, right, that you're supposed to understand and just kind of gloss over. But to your point, like, wow, is it that easy? It took only 3 months to get back on the throne. Like, no, albeit it's a longer journey than 3 months because he was in the mountains for years. I think we're supposed to know that, right, or assume that.
Yes,
with the Lingtang, and that's why they were fake building up armory or whatever, right? Which got her whole family killed, or half of her family, which I'm like, wait, so he allowed that to happen?
No, they said he didn't know it was going to happen. And after it happened, her anger at him is that he didn't do anything to the woman who called the shots on it, right? Like she's like, you didn't reprimand her, you just continued to dote on her and allow her to run loose, is basically how I interpreted it. So
he allowed it because he needs them as allies, which is so she knows the kind of man he is, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's putting his needs before everyone else, basically. Like his goal is to get back on the throne. But he, he's also, it's interesting. I mean, I don't think we plan to talk about the emperor, but he in his way is a very self-righteous character, right? Like he's like, I'm gonna bring peace to everyone. I'm gonna like get rid of all the corruption. I'm gonna be like the best emperor since sliced bread, right? And it's like like what, I don't know, like, but then he had to allow terrible things to happen before he can get back on the throne. So you're not like,
it's real politic, right? It's real politics.
Yes.
But we should also revisit the story in 20 years. Who knows? Maybe they might all be at war against, there might be a rebellion led by No Mingtang and her doting husband against the now evil emperor, because the empress apparently maybe died at some point or left them because he's still no good. Anyways, I'm just making this up, but see, I can write these scripts too. Go ahead.
But I was gonna say I touched on the wedding, but like the wedding was actually a very detailed episode. I almost talk about. It was
all of episode 36. So here's what I'll say. They did credit to a Chinese wedding, or of that type of wedding, whereas most shows it's like the wedding is glossed over, right? You just see like the highlights. They really like did the whole almost like wedding stuff, right? It was like him to go get her, playing the wedding games. and then her waiting for him to come back from the
Mm-hmm.
drinking and stuff. I'm like, wow, they really did a whole episode on the wedding. But that's why I thought it was appropriate when you said, oh, they could have just ended it at the wedding and wrapped it neatly. I'm like, yeah, actually, that would have worked very well because it's a true wedding. It's not just.
Yes, I love the wedding because, like you said, usually I feel like a lot of dramas kind of like they don't want to give you the wedding because either they think it's tropey or it's like they just want to be different and they don't want to give you
Like, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to show
right,
dramatically?
right, or they don't want to do a traditional wedding because it's like, well, you probably seen that before, but actually, like in modern dramas, it's rarely done. Usually it's a wedding that gets interrupted, or like
Yes.
you said. Right, or they literally just pan and then 5 seconds later they're in the wedding chambers, right? You don't
Yeah.
see like here they even show the families like putting the dates and the nuts on the bed
Yep.
and like
Yep.
decorating. And I was like, oh, it's so like I feel like it ties back to the first beginning 20 episodes where it's so
Yes.
charming.
Yes.
It's so charming to
It
show you.
works.
Yes,
The
like it
slice of
shows you the
life.
life. Yes. I loved it. I loved all the details. I mean everyone like wore beautiful clothing and then actually to kind of like link that to sort of how the rest of the drama did sort of justice to Chinese culture in general. Like I love the porcelain business. I know people are like this is so boring, but I was like, oh, it's interesting. I never thought of okay, you go to a museum, you see like a vase. Like in my head, I never imagined like oh, like 500,000 years ago, there are these people who had businesses and they
100,000 years ago.
yeah,
Whoa.
like they whenever
You
pottery
mean
came
500
about.
to 1,000 years ago, right?
Yeah,
Not
yeah, yeah, yeah.
500,000 years ago.
No, no,
Okay,
no.
I
500
misunderstood.
to yeah, 500 to 1,000. Sorry, I spoke too fast. So like I guess like it's kind of nice to see it play out. Like oh, they were porcelain guilds. Like I don't think like that for Chinese history. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like I always picture like one guy sitting there making a vase, but no, it's actually like a whole team of craftsmen. It's people like planning and it's a business, and it's like oh, this is very nice to see. And it's nice to see how they try to show like the sort of lifestyle that you don't see very often. And actually even the plate she made, the dragonfly plate, I was like, oh, I wish I could buy that off Taobao. Like it's a very nice plate. But I felt like they did a lot of just sort of touches of cultural Chinese culture that you don't see. It's usually like in the backdrop, but here they highlighted it, or even with Go, like when they played Go. I mean, that was a big plot. Not plot. That was a big part of the plot where they bring it up because in the beginning he pretended to be a Go player and he would spend all his days at the Go club. So I don't know. I just liked how they did that. For me, it was very fun and nice to see and very beautiful.
I think aesthetically too, right? I mentioned this last time when we were talking about the show that the costuming and the visual aesthetics were very pleasing. Not a grand type of scale, like flashy, but just very pleasing, like vignettes of what I would imagine sceneries of middle to upper middle or even wealthy Chinese ancient, classes of people existing, right? And the colors all
Mm-hmm.
meld together, not so glary and
Mm-hmm.
gaudy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very pleasing flow. And it worked for me, and I do enjoy, like you said, some of these touches around like the porcelain and the guilds and then playing Go, all of that. Like it's just how life is back in the
Yeah.
day. Just like, if
Mm-hmm.
someone were to look on our modern life, 2,000 years from now, right? They'll be like, oh, so that's how life was, like,
Internet,
yeah, we
computers.
we don't know actually, we actually don't know. So, um, I feel like okay, so we've been talking about this for a while. Anything else? Oh, I know what so we were talking about inconsistencies or things that were kind of hard to believe. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned this to you as a theory. I think they changed the plot for the show a little bit last minute. Here's why. So I have read somewhere that in a novel, so the male character has a fifth brother who's in a
Mm-hmm.
wheelchair. I read
Mm-hmm.
that in the novel, he's actually a big bad. Like he's a villain, revealed to be a
Mm.
villain. So I remember I texted you and I said, while I was still watching the 30s, I said, the actor who plays him in the show Lai Yi, his name is Lai Yi, usually plays much more prominent characters. He's actually been in even a lead actor in some shows with Bai Lu. I think he had one. How come he's just such a minor character in this show?
Mm.
And when they introduced this, was it Mr. Big villain who was hooded? I was like, oh, that's gonna be Fifth Brother, right? Because I was like, why else would you have an actor play like just such a random character that shows up for like 3 scenes and is gone, right?
Right.
But that did not prove to be the case. It proved to be this useless throwaway, shithead of a son of the official who's good. I was like, he's Mr. Big. And remember I said, I bet you they originally intended to follow, if the novel is true, that what I heard about the novel is true.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell me once you finish the novel, if you finish it. I was like, they probably wanted him to be the big bad. Not the big bad, or at least one of the big bads to be revealed. But they were like, oh no, it's not going to work. Let's not go down that route. Let's just pick random person. We never showed this face anyway, so it'll be the son. The worthless son.
Some minor character that they met. So he's the male lead's brother-in-law in the story. So his sister's husband.
Right.
Yeah, so it's funny. I was telling you, I was like trying to find a picture because this guy popped out of nowhere, and I was like, dude, are they even like he's not on any of the posters? He's so minor. Like there's one picture they did late in the drama, like that they used to promote the show, and then when I clicked on it, I'm like, oh, he played like this really annoying character in like Everyone Loves Me, and I was like, oh, it's that same annoying guy. So this poor guy's like playing all these annoying characters, but I was like, he had no storyline. I thought he was there as like cannon fodder or something. And then they're just like, oh, he's the traitor. He's the one he's making all this money, colluding with the corrupt officials at the top. And I was like, that's such a letdown because I know even though he's doing it with the true wannabe usurper, the Prince Sui, it was just so sad that they didn't do something more badass, I guess. Like you said, if they had stuck with the fifth brother, that would have been really interesting because like the whole time he's like super supportive, right, of the male lead. Oh, I'm here for you, brother, and whatever you need. Oh, you're going off to war. I'm gonna hold down the fort for you. And then like it would have been really cool to see him being like the actual bad guy.
Well, in terms of screen presence, right, and just like persona, you would believe it more if I told you like the guy in the wheelchair, the fifth brother, is maybe a bad guy in hidden in sight versus the pipsqueak of a useless son, right? He's not a good guy, but he's not smart,
right?
He's not exactly like able to like face up any hurdles. Even as a bad guy, you have to face hurdles, right? Like you have to outsmart things and direct things, especially if your name is Mr. Big. You're not Mr. Peon. If he's Mr. Peon, okay, Mr. fine. Peon.
It's funny,
Mr. Big.
Yeah, because if you want to talk about character motivation, the fifth brother has more reason to be the bad guy, right? Because he's an illegitimate son of the previous lord. Versus this other guy who is a legitimate son of like an actual.
Right. I think in the story, Duke. What I read is that there was jealousy, like the fifth brother, because of his situation in life. It was jealous and stuff. So, which would make much more sense.
Yeah, I don't. And even if that didn't happen in the novel, I'm surprised they just didn't do it that way because it would have made the story more interesting to watch.
Yeah, that's my conspiracy theory.
Oh, what a shame! That's a missed opportunity to have made this a stronger show.
Yeah. That would have been much more interesting than the wasted 9 episodes. I'm taking the wedding episode out because that was a good episode of them just running around with shenanigans, like checking boxes off of the plot. I'm like, oh, okay, they took it. They're doing this. Oh, they're maneuvering that. So, anyways, we said before we wrap, right? Before we give a rating, we would come back to I think the secondary characters briefly. We like the Marquis, his best friend. Back to the time when they were trying to make him breaking the leg a bigger deal than it is. I just remember the Marquis, like the way he was acting, it was so overacting, but it was so hilarious. His voice cracked. Right? He's like, oh my God, you can't. Like, I'm like, oh my God, this is. And they, but the funny thing is, you know, you at the audience, you're like cracking, but at the same time, you're like, oh, but the eunuch and the other lord is totally buying it, right? They're like, oh,
yeah. You know, okay, I will say the best friend. I felt like I felt sorry for his character because I feel like they didn't know what to do with his character. Like he was good for sort of those like one-on-one moments where they can chit chat, right? Like they're funny moments, right? And then once they added the element of trying to match him with a female female lead.
I didn't like that.
I felt like the charm was kind of lost because first of all, I don't think they were even good. They didn't even had chemistry with each other.
I didn't like the girl. I didn't like the character. I mentioned that to you. She seemed kind of bitchy.
Yeah. Well, because she was jealous, like you said. She was jealous in the beginning that she thought Liu Miantang was tricking the Lord, or she was his mistress or something.
Right.
So she was already jealous.
Liu Mingtang, though. I feel like she just kind of like, her family, her dad and brother were awful, right? That the way they treated her.
They weren't great people.
But she wasn't very nice to other people like the Marquis. Like, she just took out her own unhappiness on other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like she misunderstood people on purpose almost.
Yeah. Like she felt justified doing it too. Yeah. Like I don't ever feel she was apologetic.
Like I need a punching bag and you're there, I'm just gonna punch you and you're gonna take it. I'm like, well, that's not very nice. Of course he liked her, so I'm like, well, that's stupid now.
And I don't know why he liked her.
Right. It's not clear.
Yeah, I don't know why he liked her because she was never nice to him. And then like I felt bad every time they tied him up. What's happening? Like it was almost like, okay, this gag was funny the first time, but not so funny the second time.
But speaking of gags, though, at least he knew to spit the gag out that they put in his mouth.
Was funny.
Some people are like, oh, finally somebody knows that doesn't work to gag so.
Like when you stuff a sock in your mouth, you can spit it out. It's not gonna stay lodged in.
You know, in every other show, right? They just stiff something like in your face, and suddenly you can't talk. I'm like, really? Like, did you duct tape that? Like, how does that work?
Oh, so the friend, you know how he did the paintings of the male lead?
Yeah, that was funny.
They were really funny. Right? On his Weibo, like I think he had one of them framed, and I think his caption was like, "I will take orders." Like. I will take like anybody. Like I'll take commissions.
Right.
So,
the other CP, which is the Emperor Empress, we already talked about. We like them together. I really like the Empress. People are like, "Oh, she's kind of plump." I'm like, I know she's supposed to be playing kind of a eating a girl who likes
a foodie.
To eat.
She's a foodie.
Yeah, foodie. Eating. Can't speak English today, but I don't think she's very pretty to me. She's very like sweet, you know what I mean? And such a likable character. Not much else to say other than I thought they matched really well. So it was good to see that they actually. It's rare to have a second male lead not just keep on pining for the female lead, right?
Yeah, he moved on actually.
Right, he did move on. I was like, thank God, rational people.
Yes, he moved on, but he didn't move on to like another woman. He moved on like, okay, that ship has sailed, and I just need to focus.
I've closed, right?
Yeah. Like I need to focus on my original goals here, and I think they made it.
Who is there is happiness that I can sort of harvest from my own life presently, like if I want to go get it. Basically.
Yes. And I love that even though he even told her he doesn't love her, he has no affection for her, but he will defend her, right? Like when he felt that the concubine, Xian, when she asked for like the Empress's hair jewelry and she wore it, he's like, remove them, like you can't flaunt that. I don't care if she gave them to you, you can't wear it. And like I love that he's not doing it for show. He's just like angry for her. Like you need to know your place, you know. And he probably
also
knew
worked as part of their plot too.
Yeah, of course. But it was kind of weird watching them. So actually, if you don't talk about the Empress, you talk about his relationship with the consort, like she's liked him since whenever, right? Like he's the one she had eyes for, and she was doing all this stuff to get closer to him, even when he was supposedly with Liu Mentang. And I feel kind of sad for her. Like, I mean, I know we said she's, the poor actress is typecast as like the bitchy character, but I did feel sad for her because she legitimately cared about him, and she just kind of gets mistreated. Like the prince, who is her adopted father, he was pretty mean to her too, right? He was using her. I just felt like she was used by every man, and that she had either love
Yeah.
or respect for.
Sure.
And it was
Doesn't
just sad.
excuse the fact that she's a bitch.
Yeah, I'm not saying
and a mean
doesn't
one.
justify it. Yeah, yeah, because she also got a lot of people killed due to her actions. So,
Right,
I mean,
and no one told her to do half of them. She decided to do them herself for her own needs.
yeah, because she thought she was smart. She thought she was the smarter one.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So actually, one of the things that I want to touch upon is Zhang Wanyi. Like, so you and I like his acting, but I feel like some of the comments I've read is like he doesn't emote. He's stiff. He doesn't. I don't know. Like people just think he's not a good actor, and
yeah, I think some people want to see acting, which I'm like, that's not acting. That's acting. That's like me trying to act.
But okay. So I told you when I watched Lost You Forever, which is first time I watched him act. Like to me, his character is not a character I really like love. Like he's okay. Like even in the novel, I wasn't a Churan like fan, but I felt like, but I liked his acting. Like I didn't like the character he played. And then in this one, I feel like he actually had like I haven't seen. I'm sure I've read that he's acted in a lot of other things, but I feel like he played this character pretty well. Like I don't get the whole not emoting, because if you actually see him in real life, like I think that's just him. I feel like he's probably an introvert. He does not emote, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have emotions, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat, so you don't have to convince me, right? Like I feel like he's a very deadpan type of person. Deadpan doesn't mean you have no emotions.
Yes.
Right? Deadpan, like deadpan comedy, for example. He's really good at that because he's like straight faced as ever, but you're like, this is hilarious. Like, like you can surmise there's panic happening inside of him because he's like, oh shit, how do I recover from this, right? But he's deadpan about it. So I'm like, it's not bad acting. It's just not what you think you expect someone to do, because that's not how. Like some people freak out at the littlest bug, right? And they're like, jumping over. He's not the type to do that. So then, if he's not like that, you are gonna say that, oh, he's not normal. Like that, I feel like that's the criticism that's being leveled, and or people are used to, I don't know, really bad, outrageous overacting.
Right. So I will say I don't agree with the people who say he can't act or he's wooden. I actually think I like the way he's acting, because I feel like that's actually more realistic in a realistic environment. Like he is not going to overreact. He's actually going to stay as calm as he can, because
I would stay very calm. But I've been told that that's not normal. They're like, oh, how do you stay so calm? Like I've had people tell me, they're like, you stay so calm in a crisis. I'm like, but that's how I am. Like, MBTI, I'm an ISTP. We stay really calm in extreme crises, and we're very good at crisis situations because of that.
Yep. I'm also an I, so yeah. I read him as an I. I'm like, he's an introvert, and doesn't mean he's not warm, or he's a warm person, but he's not gonna be like crazy in your face. Like I just feel like the criticism is a little unfair, but to each his own. Everyone has a right to their own opinions. I'm just gonna stand by. I did enjoy his acting, and I love the character he played here, and I will watch him in another drama.
This says delivered, right? Remember we went in before this started showing. I was like, oh, I'm looking forward to this drama because I like Zhang Wanyi in Lost You Forever. Even just like you, I don't really like Churan, but right, I like him from that. So I was looking forward to this show, and I was like, well, it confirmed that I do like him. I will like to watch him in more shows. And now I've also liked Wang Churan enough to watch, them. It'd be great if they were in another show together, but I don't need them together in a different show either, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I just want to see them paired again. I'm not like a CP fan or anything like that. But yeah, I'm always happy to discover actors new to me that I would continue watching because you know what? Sometimes it's the pickings are slim sometimes out there.
It's true.
You're like, whoa.
I don't know if this is true. Like Wang Chuan supposedly has a drama coming out with Tan Jiansi.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No,
it's a rom-com.
I thought they were like, I thought they were like photoshopped or AI pictures.
Oh, no, I didn't mention that to you. I'm sorry.
No, I was like, oh my god, really?
Yeah,
it's like a circle. Yeah. It's like a triangle.
It's a virtuous circle.
That's so funny. And then, I didn't mention this. I think I mentioned before. The Emperor, the actor that plays him, when I saw him on camera for the first time, I was like, that's who I pictured as Tu Shanjing in Lost You Forever. Like that look, not the other actor.
He would have worked out for me as Tu Shanjing, to be honest.
Right?
Less wooden, right?
Yes. I feel like he could have played him. I don't think he's probably not as famous, right?
Yeah,
I don't like. He's never been a lead, male lead or second male lead. I mean, I don't know. He looks young. He looks up and coming. So, but I was like, oh, he actually like when I read the novel, that's the face I pictured. And then obviously a different actor played him. But what's his name? Deng Wei.
Deng Wei. Yes.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, I don't know. I like this drama. I feel like there were a lot of new actors that we discovered from this drama as well. And
yes, if
I
they
will
just trimmed it a little bit and was tighter and maybe made Mr. Big someone else instead of Mr. Peon, that would have been good. So
Mr. Peon.
It's not a word you use often.
What rating would you give this?
Oh, this is so difficult. But I don't even want to give it a numbers grade. Can I just give it a letter grade?
Yeah.
It's a B plus A minus show. It's definitely in between. Here's why. It's not, oh my god, this hit it out of the ballpark show. Because it's not a grand show of that sort, right? Like, but I'm like, especially the first half, I'm like A minus. I was like A minus, but striving to become B plus at the end. I'm like, oh, you're striving in the wrong direction.
Right.
So that's how I feel about the show.
I think I would agree. Like I said, I was happy if we just ended at the wedding and then I just didn't see anything beyond that. I would have been just as happy. And I would say the romance between them is still really good. Like I would say the loyalty and dedication they had for one another really, I was convinced by it. I was convinced. And like I said, this was the first time I watched Wang Churan act, and I don't know if she's naturally like this, but the way she looks at him with such love and adoration, like she really likes this guy. Like you can see it. It's not like one of those faces where you're like, oh, I don't, right? Like, oh, you're acting. Like they are acting, but I don't feel the acting. You know,
Zhang Wanyi is actually not my type, but I like him. Like
he's not my type either.
Yeah, not that I know what exactly my type is, but you know my types, right? Like I think I've seen some of your types. Yeah, what? Oh, Chen Xixi is definitely my type. Yeah, in the Chinese actors pantheon, Chen Xixi is. So yes. Zhang Wanyi is not my type. Oh, yes.
I was gonna say one thing I do wish he did for the role is that he bulked up a little bit because he's supposed to be like.
I don't see him bulking up. Like,
a general in battle.
Yes,
like,
he's a bit.
He's just
demure. He's a little bit too demure for the type of fighting
like
stuff he's supposed to carry off.
Yeah, just a little bit of muscle tone on the arms would have been more convincing, because they did have a scene where he was in like a bathtub or something, and I'm like, oh. Couldn't you like?
Maybe he will. Like, what's his name? Wang Xingyue, right? Who used to be like the stick figure of a man, but he built some muscle. Not bulked up, but they're both like probably more like lean muscle types, not a bulk.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what. Yeah, I'm just saying, because in the novel they do say she admired his body because he worked out every morning in the courtyard. And you're like, I don't know, that didn't happen in the drama.
In the book, he had to go work out when she tried to like get in bed with him too. He's like, "Oh, I forgot to practice my
My martial arts.
yeah, I gotta go practice now and take a cold shower." And then I think he got a fever the next day because of that. So I thought that was hilarious.
Oh,
But
that's funny.
anyways, I think we're good to wrap. Anything else before we do so?
No, I think again, I really love this drama. Very pretty scenery, very pretty sets, very pretty people, very pretty romance. I would still watch it for the first 36 episodes. Just skip the last 4 if you
Actually,
run out
don't
of
skip the
steam.
last 4. Skip episodes like 31 to 35. You can speed watch all of that. 36, don't skip because it's the wedding. 37 to 40, you can even speed through that basically. But don't miss
Yeah.
the ending because then they end it
Oh
properly.
yes, that you do want to see the happy ending, which, like I said, rare in dramas these days. So you want that.
So, alrighty then. Until next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.